Now, over the past 18 months or so, we've had an increase in the value of homes, the market value of homes. However, we won't have that valuation for 2018 until sometime after May 1st of 2017. So effective around that time, we'll get an idea of how much of an impact this Gallagher Amendment provision will be. But at this point, we can assume that instead of seeing a the anticipated 15% increase in revenues from property tax, that we will probably see a decrease instead. And then there is a very strong likelihood that in 2020 that will decrease even further. This doesn't have anything to do with local situation. It's entirely caused by a relatively obscure provision within Tabor that requires that whenever residential property values pay more than 45% of the statewide tax, the valuation has to be reduced to move that back under 45%. And what we had over the last 2 years has been a significant decline in the revenue from gas and oil, and a fairly significant climb in the residential values of homes in the Denver metro area. And so as a result, we are going to be looking at a tighter budget than we have been kind of projecting over the last several years. At this point, I would say that we aren't going to have a good picture of what that's going to be until mid-year, and we've started to have discussions with state fire chiefs and with the local fire districts on how to manage those impacts. But we don't. I would say that at this point we're still on a wait and see situation until May rolls around. So obviously that's one of the major items that we're going to be looking at over the next several months. In apparatus, we have gone ahead and delayed the rebuild of the Type 6 brush truck due to that changing estimate of our income for next year. And in addition, Rescue 480 is out of service because of contamination of the diesel exhaust fluid system.
Which one is 480? Is which?
That's the squad truck.
Oh, the squad's 480.
Yeah, yeah. The other thing that we're seeing also is that the estimates for re-chassing the ambulance have gone up fairly dramatically, and we're going to be probably looking at quite a bit more money to do those re-chassis than we had previously expected, and that's largely because of changes in regulations that require more extensive systems to secure the cots in the back, and other changing regulations, which have been the big thing that's been pushing the cost of all of our apparatus up. The JEFCOM consolidation is set for January 1 of 2018. In the interim, we have started the process of consolidating our radio traffic and operational procedures with West Metro, Arvada, Golden, and all of the Foothills fire districts. So we'll be working essentially to try to come up with common ways of doing things with all of those departments. And we're also looking at, in the interim, before we even get into JEFCOM, is procedures for improving how we handle multi-agency response. The Foothills Fire Departments have already made quite a bit of progress in that direction, but now a number of the fire departments down the hill are actually starting to move more toward being able to have joint dispatching on the larger events. And we noticed that with yesterday's fire, in fact, that that fire ended up having a number, basically I think 8 of the departments in the region were automatically dispatched to it because of the size of the fire. So rather than having to scramble to come up with additional help, we had enough help respond to the fire automatically from automatic aid dispatching.
I was telling Chief Ware, I did pick up some of it or most of it on the radio, and it sounded great. I mean, it just sounded like between everybody, they had that thing. The initial attack was just what it should be, I suppose.
Yeah, certainly. It was a situation that could have been very bad, and all of the people that assisted with that were able to really keep that fire to a pretty minimal level given the weather conditions and where we sit with our fire danger currently. Obviously, with a warm, dry fall and essentially a very dry winter so far this year, we're really setting up for another significant fire season. We've got, in fact, it's forecast to be 65 degrees up here tomorrow, and then hopefully we'll see some moisture come in Saturday, but it's not expected to be a lot, and then we're going to be back into a dry pattern after that. So we're really getting to the point where we're gearing up for fire season now, and hoping that the March snows will come around.
What about air assets? Are they going to be parking air assets at Jefferson County Airport? What used to be Jefferson County Airport?
It's too early at this point. Nothing is going to be available for a number of months yet. The seasonal contracts just don't have an option of starting this early in the season.
What about helicopters?
The Rampart call when needed helicopter out of Douglas is not on yet, but they have the ability to bring that on fairly early. And I don't believe the Monument, the U.S. federal helicopter, will be on for quite a while yet. May
10th, maybe.
Yeah,
That's
May.
usually
Any way of juicing that up a little bit?
No, it has to do with the seasonal employees. They can't get over there 10:45. Their hours, it won't come on early.
Right. They can't bring them on early unless they are going to cut them off early. And obviously, with the federal hiring rules, it's not simple to bring people on.
Yeah. And
with the temporary hiring freeze, everything has been delayed a little bit. So they have approved hiring the seasonal and temporary Forest Service personnel, but everybody who normally would have been in process in January is now pushed back a month, which is not unusual during administration changes in the federal government. We are again applying for the grant for rechassing one of the ambulances, and that's in process currently. We did elect not to pursue the SAFER grant for staffing because that essentially would tie us to our existing staffing plus additional personnel brought on with the grant. And with our current fiscal situation, we have a very high likelihood that the new employees, one or both of the new employees, will have to be laid off going into next year. We had temporary funding for those employees to get us through the end of this year, with the anticipation that we would see an increase in tax revenue next year. Without that increase, I think those jobs are very likely on the chopping block, and those employees have been notified of that, and we've told them we'll do what we can, but they know that there's a chance that they'll have layoffs in those two positions. I doubt very much that we would lay off any positions other than the 2 new hires. And then finally, the last thing in grants is that we are applying for a grant for a chipper and chipping crew for the summer. We were actually invited to apply for that particular grant through the Upper South Platte Partnership, and it would tie in very much with the funding that they have, which fortunately is actually corporate funding. They have corporate grants from Denver Water and from a number of large corporations to pursue you know, improvement in the fuel situation in the Upper South Platte drainage. So there's a good likelihood that we'll get that grant, which will be useful for doing the community chipping projects that you know, we did the basically sample project on Conifer Mountain this last year to show that it could be done. So hopefully that'll come through here by April of this year. And that's all I have.
Any questions for the chief?
If the budget cut that we're going to sustain here because of the Gallagher Act doesn't really become apparent until May, what's the drop dead date for a mill levy election for us to initiate the action?
That would be in July.
Okay, so 2 months after we find out then?
Essentially, yes. And you know, with this year, the only date that's allowable is you know, the Tuesday in November, and then in 2018 there are 2 dates that can be used, which would be the May date and the November date. So should the board need to, or see a need to go for a levy increase, that again would be July for that first one, and then sometime after the first of the year for the May date. I believe that's in February.
In that regard, since this is a statewide problem, can you keep us informed about the plans of other special districts, especially the fire departments here, in terms of what they're going to do with regard to any sort of mill levy?
Yes, we have a meeting of the state chiefs on the 15th of this month to discuss the issue and to talk about what, not just what fire districts are going to be doing, but whether or not there's any legislative you know, method to you know, approach this. And then we also will be meeting the Director of State Chiefs, Gary Brees, will be coming to a local meeting in March, and we're inviting a number of the surrounding counties to that as well, where we can basically discuss those issues. Obviously, with this issue, you know, the areas that rely heavily on sales tax are not going to be impacted significantly. So the Denver metro area will have much less of an impact, you know, within the cities, and then within the districts in the immediate Denver metro area, they'll also, you know, they also saw the highest value gains in the housing boom. So they probably will be in better shape than you know, areas that are more rural. So the further that you get away from Denver, the greater the impact is going to be. And so obviously this is going to be a statewide issue, and it's going to impact the corners of the state certainly much more than it will impact the immediate Denver metro area.
Okay.
And if I could say a couple things about the meeting on the 15th. We will have a lot of speakers there. There are a couple of ideas that could possibly be done in legislation, even though it's a constitutional issue. Also including some ideas on a plan for dealing with this constitutional issue. So there's a whole lot of information that's going to be shared on the 15th. So we'll have a lot a lot better idea of how this is going to affect us and possibly some options for dealing with it in the short term and the long term. So that will be a real valuable meeting. We'll have a lot better idea of what's happening after the meeting on the 15th.
Good. Thank you, Mike.
You bet.
Any other questions for the chief? Deputy Chief Ware. Yep. Deputy Chief Ware.
I don't really have a report this month, only because we're in the transition to the new record management system. We're kind of moving out of Firehouse and into this emergency reporting. We've got almost everything built in it, but we don't have all the complete data. Next month I'll have pretty much everything for the first part of the month, for January as well as February. We did have 28 transports. It was a pretty slow month for calls as well as.
Yeah, it looked like
less than last
It's
year.
it's been slow until yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then yesterday picked up.
I think
5
calls at once.
I think 10 calls yesterday.
10 calls,
Yeah,
yeah,
10
it was
calls.
five or fires, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Though one thing we have seen over this winter is that while we've been slower with calls in general, the number of structure fires that we've had is definitely up over last winter or the winter before.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to new business. Chief, you want to run us through this IGA modification?
Okay, the IGA modification is something that has been requested by the JCECA, which is the Jefferson County Emergency Communications Authority. And that authority is the authority that is made up of all of the fire and law enforcement and EMS agencies that operate within Jefferson County. And they are the ones that are authorized to collect the 70-cent per phone line tax to fund dispatching operations. With the planned move to JEFCOM, they have made a request to the Public Utilities Commission to go from that 70 cents to $1.20, which is still much lower than average. Most agencies are at $1.50 or greater, but this would move that telephone tax up to $1.50 per line, and would be that money would be used to fund the JEFCOM Communications Center. So in order to ratify that, they need to have a majority of the participating agencies to vote in favor of that resolution, and that does not by itself increase that that tax. It just takes the limitations that are currently on the JCECA out, so that the JCECA can then make the formal request if they deem it appropriate to the PUC for increasing that telephone tax to $1.20.
So we need a motion to approve this modification, is that correct?
That'd be correct, yes.
I'll make that motion.
All right, would you? Thank you, Mike.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Any other business for us? Any old business?
I've got one question.
Oh, yeah?
If this funding goes up, does this impact the money that we're expected to pay annually into the program?
Yes, it does reduce. It reduces that. As I had mentioned, our cost for dispatching is, 5 years ago when it was being provided by the sheriff, it was free. Under Evergreen, we've been slowly picking up about 20% more per year of that funding. With the move to JEFCOM, we'll be required to pay 100% of our share of it. That would be about $70,000 without the increase, but with the increase, it'll be dropping back down to about $50,000. So that telephone tax increase will save us about $20,000 up front and more, several years down the road.
Okay.
Mike, did you have a comment or question?
Well, I was gonna, the letter the chief sent out today to the commissioners,
Yeah,
I know it's a draft, but there is a typo or a sentence that needs to be fixed in there. Let's
Yes.
bring it to his attention. I'm sure he's probably aware of that now.
Okay, yeah, Director Barrett did catch that also, so.
Okay, all
Yeah,
right.
got that
Just wanna
typo
make sure,
and,
because if I catch it, it must be pretty bad. Okay, that's all I wanted.
all right, thank you, Mike. Any other old business? Any new business? Citizens issues? We'll need a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
All right.
All right. Nice job, Alex.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sounds like.
See you all later. All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
I think you might have lost Len somewhere.
Hello?
Yeah, we're almost at the end, but I'm pushing for a little while.
Hold on a second. Say again?
Was the meeting over? It get cut out.
Oh, it did cut out? Yeah, we're adjourned. We're adjourned.
Alex, thank you so much. You take good care, my friend.
All right, you too. Take care of yourself.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.